I call the meeting to order. We rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion we suspend the meeting until our other members arrive.
Second.
Second? Okay, any discussion?
Get jumpy there, Larry.
All in favor? That will be unanimous. The people present here are Mary Sear, Larry Heath, Jim McCarthy, Cheryl Gannon, and Annie Collier, and Matt Angel, Business Administrator. Thank you, so we're suspended. We're going to resume our meeting now. We are still missing two of our members who are due to arrive at any time, but in the meantime, we're going to move to approve the minutes of December 5th. We have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, that's from Larry Heath. Second?
Second.
Second from Mary Sear. And Cheryl has done a fabulous job of editing them. Do you want to go over the edits a little bit, Cheryl?
Well, mostly what I did was try and consolidate things. And Judy, I have to tell you, boy, were you ever a court stenographer? It's amazing the detail you've got in there. And I don't want to take anything away from your work. But just trying to consolidate it, like we don't need to have verbatim minutes. So it's way easier to look at what someone's done and kind of edit it down than to start from the beginning and try and figure out what should I include and what shouldn't I include. So it kept all of the motions. That was all great. It followed all the new guidelines with bolding things. So it was just, I made some consolidations, like if there was a heading of this is what we discussed, and then saying it again, repeating it that it was discussed, I tried to consolidate that. And I think I really didn't change any of the content.
No, it looked like when I was reading it through, it looked like you got all the high points of everything.
Just like cut off one page. Oh, there we go. Made it about one page less.
Jim, welcome. We went into suspension for until 7:30.
I know.
Yeah, and then we just resumed now and we're just doing the minutes.
Yeah.
And we're waiting on Maura, who is got a band player in the concert, so she ought to be here shortly. So Cheryl was just going over her revisions that she suggests for the minutes.
I mean, like for Pledge of Allegiance recited by all present, I just said Pledge of Allegiance. You know, again, all of the motions, the seconds, how they were voted was all kept in there. There was definitely on page 3 of the original federal EA, it's supposed to be E-rates, not EA. When Matt was talking about the E-rates.
Okay.
So I did change that because in the original it said part of when Jim had brought up about the Comcast and Matt responded that we get funding from the E-rate, which is the school kind of discount. So in the original minutes it was written as EA, Electronic Arts, which is not correct. So I just corrected that part. And it was mentioned twice, EA funding, so I just changed that to E-rate funding. And I just kind of, again, consolidated the public comments that everybody loves us. So just kind of consolidated to reduce it to 2.5 pages instead of 3.5.
Okay. So I guess we can motion to amend the original motion to adopt these minutes. Can we have an amendment for that?
So moved.
Okay, Mr. Doggett, second. Second, Mr. Heath. All in favor? That'd be unanimous. And then the original motion, that, to accept the minutes, I'm not sure.
As amended.
What is the proper
Just say
thing?
as amended. Yeah.
As amended.
Yeah, I mean,
As amended.
literally the second motion replaced the first, so
Correct.
it's to
So the first one is,
adopt the minutes as amended.
right. Okay, good. Good. Okay, so I would really like us to wait for more. I will just preface that the next thing that we have is, the next major thing that we have is to present a public hearing for the budget that we voted in last week. And that's, at that public hearing, then that's a hearing. So what it is for us to listen to what the people who are there have to say, and then we meet again after that to debate and see if we want to make any modifications based on the input that we get. The budget that comes out of that second meeting of the Budget Committee will then be presented by us at the deliberative session. So I know, Cheryl, and one of the things you said about the default budget, the school board is doing the default budget because it's their budget. It's not ours, so we don't have to do that.
As long as it gets there.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So what we've done is, last time I presented a couple of slides as kind of things to think about and a couple of ideas, and then asked people for input. And over the week, I've gotten input from a bunch of people. We couldn't have an online exchange of information, but what I tried to do is to take and incorporate the input that was coming in and to put it into a presentation. And so this is version 6. And at this point, we need to just go through it and decide what in it is good, what in it we want to change, what we're missing, and so forth. I want to thank everybody for their, for their contributions. It was really great to have a team working together. So what we've got, if I can get up to the first slide. The first slide is this one. I've got it in this size so that we can edit as we go along. I think it can be seen. Does anybody have anything about this one is this okay for first slide? Yes.
I just, when I sent mine, I told you guys that I looked at a lot of the formatting because I've been out in that audience and trying to see something at that distance. So the point of this one, my suggestion was that the fiscal year 2021 budget proposal should be in larger print because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
We all know we're at the Sanborn Regional School District.
Okay.
So yeah, change the font size on that to smaller. On
Yeah.
the same one regional.
How's that?
Yep,
That's
and
much
change
better.
and make Sanborn Regional just a smaller font size. Yeah.
Any idea how those colors are going to show when?
When we print?
Yeah. And when it's put up on the projector, it's kind of funny because I was watching back through a lot of the videos and looking at some of the presentations that were done during the meeting. And then my recollection of the one that I actually did go to last year, what was on the screen versus what was shown during the presentation out in the audience, I was like, wow, that's kind of horrible. It looks so good here, but then when it got there, it was horrible. Might be a little harsh, but it was kind of not as good. So I was wondering how.
And not as good was it because it wasn't in color?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there were so many slides that, we kind of went back and forth I don't know, the cost of doing it in color is not that much, is it? For
Well, the presentation in color, but when you print it out, when you printed it out, it was shades of gray.
Right.
Were blending with some of the font of
Yes,
the other
yeah.
text that I'm looking at it, and I was like, I can't read this here. And then when I got home, I still couldn't read it.
Right.
Yeah,
And
we can
online?
change that in here.
Online, I could read it.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, so you look at it here, we look at it on a computer, it's fine. But when you get it in the printout, in the audience there, you don't have as good a lighting.
Yeah.
And when I got it home, I was looking at it thinking, I'm like, okay, maybe when I read it at home, it's gonna be better. And it really wasn't. So
Yeah.
So what's your suggestion about that?
can we look at the colors and fonts used last year? Is there a chance to get that program and, or that presentation and review it again, print it out, just print out one or two, review them and see if we can apply lessons learned to that, to here, when we print it out for the general audience.
Are you saying you liked the colors that you saw online, or that you didn't? The issue was in the print for
The
you.
issue was when it printed out, yeah. So when you look at it, when you do it here on your computer, everything looks good. But when you're sitting in the audience,
I get that, but why would we look at what we did last year? Are you saying the colors visually online were good for you, but the print wasn't, and you're concerned that online, that this isn't going to print well?
again, yeah.
Okay, so there were a couple of things. One is, didn't we do 6 to a page, two-sided page, or was it 4 to a page?
I forget.
I forget. I think it
can't
was
remember.
4, wasn't it?
But
It was 4, wasn't it?
I think it might have been. And we had an addendum that went with it and everything that we probably won't need this year. If we go with this, pretty much, which is 12 slides, it's not a lot of paper. So, you know, it's a lot smaller than what. So what I'm going to suggest is that I think it's a great idea. Let's print it for our meeting in January to look and see if we need to change the colors. Okay, I personally would like to avoid a meeting on December 19th if we can.
Now,
You know, if we can get
Yeah.
through this.
The
You could-
big thing is when you get to any bar graphs,
yeah.
you end up with 2 dark gray bars.
Yes.
And little boxes down below that say, you know, this dark gray is Sanborn, this dark
It's
gray is
too
State.
Discern.
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Okay.
and where it's going to be 1 page, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's-
Last year it was 4 on a page. Now it's coming back and getting to me again. If we're going to go with 12 pages, then it's going to be much clearer.
Right.
So,
Or if we do, you know, 2 on a page,
Yeah.
then people just have 3 pages front and back and that's it. So, you know, if that's what we end up with here.
You can, what we can do when we're done is to create a handout, because that's what, when you go to print it, you create the handouts and you decide what your format's going to be. If you want it grayscale or just black and white. I usually, for my handouts, choose grayscale, and that's where you get rid of the colors. So if you look at what is that handout going to look like, if you can send that to us and we can just review it, and then when we come back for a meeting before, we're going to have one meeting before the public hearing.
Right, yeah,
Just, we'll already have seen it.
Right.
And can make comments then.
yes.
Actually, Annie, there's one thing that we've got going for us this time. We've only got one essentially bar chart.
Right.
And if you can make that 2 solid colors where they'll come out black, I think the whole problem would just go away.
Okay, let's,
Yeah.
But honestly, I think you can go up to view and you can look at it in grayscale.
yep.
Yeah.
Oh, everything just turned black. Yeah, I'm looking at this.
Yep.
I've got it up in grayscale here.
Got it up here.
Okay, so we'll do that. But thank you, Jim. Good idea. Okay, so moving on to slide 2. Mission of the Budget Committee. I like your artwork that you came up with, Cheryl. You can see that I incorporated the larger font. Does that work? honestly, my settings are set never to turn off. It never goes to sleep. This is just exasperating.
Cord.
Yeah.
It does sound like a cord issue.
Yeah,
The phone does
I
it to
think
me
it's a
quite
cord
lot
issue.
in the car.
Okay, so here's the budget process, and, this is pretty small print.
It would be improved by getting rid of the background of that box.
Yeah, get rid of
Yeah.
the shading.
Or you could make it 2 slides, have 1, 2, and 3 on one slide, and 4, 5, and 6 on the next, and then you can increase the,
Or reduce font
Size.
for the header and footer.
so just, I was gonna say, just copy that slide,
Yeah.
copy and paste
I
it,
was just, now that I've lost this, where the heck
Control Z.
no, I know, but I'm just trying to do I'm doing a new slide here. Trying to do a new slide. I may have to do this later.
Actually, Annie, if you restore the text that you
Yeah, restore
just
the
copied,
text.
Get rid of.
Then copy
This is
it.
the budget presented tonight, because obviously,
Then say that. Just say it instead of having it there.
yeah, now you
Spread it
can
out.
enlarge that block.
Do no fill.
It's a 24. There's a 32.
It's a big auditorium.
Yeah, I know. Okay. Let's try a 30. How's that?
There you go.
Do you want to get rid of this grayscale behind here?
Yes.
Yeah, printing out would be better.
I think it's off to the right, isn't it? No.
All right, I'm going to remember that. I can't figure out where it is right now.
Isn't it the no fill off
Right-hand
to
side.
to
Down.
your left, yeah, down? See format shape? Isn't it no fill?
Yep. There you go. Thank you. I couldn't find where it was. It's usually up at the top.
Yeah,
All of a sudden it's
this
moved
is a
around.
difference.
Yeah. Thank you. Love it when everybody works together. Okay, does that work? Is that big enough, do you think?
Is number 2 underlined intentionally, or is that just a,
Oh, that's,
Yeah, you know why that's
It's
there?
the
It's because it's the
design.
background. That's why I put the fill on. But you know what? I can fill it with white.
All right.
Yeah, I like that.
save it.
Yes.
I did literally 8 slides last night and lost them all.
Oh, that's
Start
so
all over
frustrating.
again.
Oh. So frustrating. Okay, I'm going to do that. Okay, save. All right. All right, next. Oh, you know what else we wanted to do was, I want to number them, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think they are numbered, but it's really
It's really
small.
tiny.
Yeah, it's really small, so let's see if, okay, I can go through and change the numbers on all of them. I don't even see it on this one.
I wouldn't change the numbers until it's done in case slides
Yep.
disappear or appear.
Okay. Okay, here's the budget proposal. See if I go back to the color, you know,
Well, there's a number showing up, but it's in color.
But I think with that background, you'd have the same problem.
Yeah.
Can you remove the background? I think it'd be better. The color on the back.
The fill?
you want the colors off in the background?
Yeah. Remove the.
for printing, Larry, or for viewing, or both?
I think
I would say
probably for
viewing
printing at
also,
least.
because
For printing, how about for viewing, we leave them? Is that okay?
That's fine.
Because I think, you know, I mean, people get
Yeah.
bored.
I think actually for printing it, it'd be better without it there.
Okay.
For looking at it on the screen, it'd probably be better to have the color up there.
So can I make a suggestion?
What's that?
I think you should always do a black font on a yellow backdrop because it just makes it pop more. I think red, I mean, that's just my opinion, but like if you envision like signs, you know, like yellow signs that you see on the street, they typically do a black font.
So what are you saying? You want what?
I mean, I think maybe if you're doing a color backdrop, do a black font. It'll just help the words. So rather than you have like a maroon red font or something.
Here?
Yeah.
No, that's black.
Is it? It looks maroon.
It looks to me.
Oh, it does up there.
Yeah.
No, it isn't though, it's black.
But will it look maroon on the screen or will it look black?
Put it on slideshow view, Annie, see what slideshow view looks like. Oops, we lost it again.
Good job,
Oh, no, it's searching for the corner. Okay, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Okay, no, that's fine.
It could just be the
What it
projector.
is the background color is an overlay on the black.
Oh, so it's making
It's
it.
changing the
Gotcha,
color.
okay.
I wonder if the
I mean, it's
background
fine.
was
You can see
yellow,
it.
it would look more black. It looks black on my
Yeah, it's black on the
computer.
computer.
Yeah, because if you look
Might
at
be
the top
just
stuff, that all
projecting.
has purple tinge to
The
it.
fact that it's projected.
I can't get back.
Escape.
Escape, yeah.
Okay, here we are. Okay, is this one okay?
Not us, it's you. We
I
have
know,
no-
I
We have
know.
nothing up there.
Oh,
Ah, there we go, okay.
is this one okay?
Yeah,
Can I just ask, I'm sorry, I know I didn't participate because I've been, but the 0.05% difference from current, is there a reason that we don't mention that in terms of dollar amount?
No.
I was just wondering, you know what I mean? Like, it's great that it's 0.05% difference, but unless I bust up my calculator, I don't know how much that is.
You can just add that, like in parentheses.
I just don't know if people would want to see that.
Okay, so we'll do plus and whatever it is, dollars here?
Yeah, I just feel like we should have a dollar amount in there.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion. You guys you don't have to agree with me.
it
It's fine.
does make sense because
No, more information is better for people. This is what we want them to know.
as the number of the budget goes up, that the percentages become actually very loose.
Okay, all right, so then that one's, we're good on that one? Everybody?
Yeah, for print, I would take out the background color.
Okay, so for the goals, as Cheryl pointed out, the goals that I put down originally are goals that we've all talked about and all this kind of thing, and they're not in any place. I looked at the goals that were in Mr. Stack's and Mr. Ambrose's presentations, and those are very much around kind of the implementation of educational stuff. And so then I went to the school board goals. Now, the school board goals have a lot of verbiage in them. So what I tried to do here is to suggest that maybe we take their first one, which is to reconfigure grades pre-K, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and move grades 7, 8 to the high school. Just instead, just say reconfigure grades pre-K to 6, and kind of summarize their goal. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, and then the same thing with the second one. Instead of all the stuff about doing all those things, reduce or eliminated unwanted property costs. And that'll be a chance to talk to, at both places and just say, by the way, the seminary is close to an agreement and, the things that have been announced in public already. And we're going to have those as warrant articles. So that'll definitely be coming up. And then the third one is basically improve and measure student outcomes. So if that's okay with everyone to use those instead of the whole big, long bunch of language. Matt, I don't think there's any need.
Make that 2 slides. It's way too much on one slide.
That's, yeah.
I'm saying get rid of the verbiage,
Right.
what she has
Reducing
highlighted.
it to 3 sentences.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying get rid of all that. Go
Oh,
here.
okay.
Just summarize. I just wanted your permission to summarize.
I think that's good right there.
And
I think
just
you could elaborate on number 3, Becca.
as far as
Yeah.
reduce or eliminate unwanted property, maybe unneeded or excess or,
I like that word excess. I think that would be better.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly
it's
what
not
it
that
is.
it's unwanted because we want to retain the middle school. We want to retain parts of, the Swayze gym as far as I'm.
Yeah, I had a little discomfort. It was actually the unwanted was from the school board verbiage.
Actually,
Unneeded. How about unneeded?
Unneeded.
No, actually, you did unused.
I like that one even
Not yet.
better.
Not yet.
Yeah.
As of next year, it will be unused.
Yeah.
With the middle
But
school.
that's just part of it.
Underutilized. Whoa.
The lawyer speaking.
Whoa. All right. right.
Will the school board do a similar presentation same evening?
Don't know.
Are we going
Yes.
to cast confusion out there if somebody in the audience is, they're watching the school board does their presentation, school board goals, and then we come up with this, people.
I don't think it'll
Well,
be
I don't think they're going to be presenting their goals.
Okay.
I think what the school board is going to do is present their warrant articles.
That's what we did last year.
Yeah, and there's one contract, I'm not sure if that's going to be presented or not. There's, for the administration.
There will be one contract presented.
I don't know if that's going for vote or not, yeah.
I think you've got it right. The school board will present the warrant articles only. The budget belongs to the budget committee.
Got it.
And
The school board's going to present the default budget too.
yes, that's correct. Yeah, I know.
Oh, you're going to do that? What fun, okay.
And Andy, I would take the costs off there because it says reduce or eliminate underutilized property or costs associated with underutilized property.
Costs associated?
Or whatever, it just seems,
Just reduce or eliminated underutilized property.
that's what I think,
Yeah.
it's effective and.
Sometimes less is best.
Don't you love when cursors jump all over the place?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I thought is, I'm going to do a solid fill white here. Because we got that line in the middle of it.
Can you, instead of that small print,
This
where
one?
where it says school board goals,
Yeah.
just put 2019-20 up there,
School board.
School board
2019,
goals.
20, yeah.
Okay.
2019 to 2020. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Yep. Always fun to figure out where the thing is to be able to remove it. Okay. Okay, good. Next, the new initiatives. I thought that, part of talking about this is improve and measure student outcomes. A big part of what is going to be done next year is putting in over the next 2 years, is putting in the reading and math intervention. So I thought this was kind of an important slide to put in. This is from Mr. Stack's presentation. Do you think that's too small down here?
I don't really understand what this means. Tier 1 core program, Tier 2 supplemental program. I don't see how that relates to the budget.
I think it absolutely does, because this Tier 2 is expanding the intervention. Right now, we have a couple of interventionists in the high school. We have a math coordinator, and the whole thing of spending $950,000 of the $1.4 million that's going to be saved in the school consolidation is for this Tier 2 implementation and in expansion.
That doesn't say that.
Well,
What you just, so that's,
I see candy corn.
Yeah.
yeah.
I agree with Cheryl.
You need to explain
Yeah.
in real life language that people can understand. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very nice graphic, but what you just said makes way more sense.
Well, I'm not going to just put the slides up, I'm going to be talking.
And this is a public hearing, so people have the opportunity to provide feedback and ask questions, so.
But I will say, sitting in the audience for many years, I'm trying to read a slide and listen to somebody talk, and I may not absorb what you say. So I walk away from this and go, what the hell is Tier 1? I don't know what Tier 2 was either.
Okay. Okay.
So I appreciate the slide, but I understand what Cheryl is saying, just in terms of what you said was great, but how do you get that somehow incorporated into the slide?
Okay.
If you were to take the 3 statements in the middle, all students, these students, this student, and put them into the tiers, it would make a lot more sense for those that are just looking at.
Okay, how about if I make a new slide with something like this? I don't know if I can do this exactly, but something like this with saying Tier 1 is what we currently have, all students are in Tier 1. Tier 2 is we have in small part, and we're going to be adding to it. That's the thing. And then Tier 3 is the intensive supports, which is basically the paras and the IEPs.
I still don't see how that relates to the budget.
Really?
As somebody who has not sat in these, listened to him, it makes no sense. Well, I mean, though, if you put the numbers that currently this is the cost, or this is where our money is mostly being spent, we're proposing to put more money into kids who need intervention and whatever the.
So would it work for you to have $950,000 with an arrow pointed to the Tier 2?
I don't know that Tier 2
That's what it's for.
matters.
Okay. That's
I mean,
the way.
what does that mean? It's nobody's ever going to see this after this presentation. What we want to know is, where is the money going and why is it relevant? Why the change is because now we're going to serve students who weren't getting served before. We're going to provide more services. That's where the funding is going to go.
So maybe list the funding amounts with a brief explanation next to it. You know, our current funding is this. This is what it covers. The additional funding would be this. This is what it covers, and then, you know,
For the
so
purpose
it's
of-
essentially the same idea, but you're not labeling them Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. It's just in more plain language, so people understand this is the money. Here's the objective behind it.
So this is too edgy-speaky?
I think, you know, sitting in the audience, it's hard to follow it. You explain it very well, but people can't, you know.
I mean, you know,
Maybe find a way to highlight the Tier 2 only, where Tier 1 and Tier 3 exist today, and the focus for the reinvestment is in Tier 2. Maybe just highlight that with the labels that, you know, Vanessa and Cheryl recommended, just so that the eye is drawn to that and
okay.
understanding which students it will impact.
All right, so I'll take it on myself, if it's okay, to play with this and to try and figure out something. I'll send it out for comments. Again, no, just, you know, BCC, just come back, you know, and let me know what works, what doesn't, and I'll keep working at it. And then we'll finalize in January. Yes, Larry?
The thing that I'm worried about is if you put a price tag on that, is somebody going to try and change that on us? You know, that's a sizable amount of money.
I think we've got the price tag
I know
later
it's
on in
there.
this presentation.
But this time, you're kind of pinpointing it right straight to one thing.
And to try and identify what is actually in Tier 2 right now, you know,
Yeah, I know.
that's going to be really tough.
That's what
Because
I
then we
was
have to
looking
see
at.
how much is the person being paid at the high school, the two people at the high school, how much is the math coordinator, you know, I mean, it's just, it gets to be, and how much are other people doing things, and are there any pairs involved, and
But there's a lot of talk regarding intervention. I mean, it's a hot topic, you know what I mean? So people want to know how much money is being invested in intervention. So you do run the risk of people trying to change that number.
Well, that's
but-
what I'm worried
But
about.
just for full transparency, hey, here's what we're looking at, you know what I
I
mean?
think it should be there,
It's-
but I'm trying to figure out a way that we could do it without driving some people away from it.
how about if we say an
Well, it's
additional 950,000?
Maybe this slide should go after we present the overview, and this would be a more drilled down.
Let's come back to this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Table this one.
Because this one has got to be in there, but I just don't know how to put it in.
Here's the overview. This is from the superintendent's presentation last spring. Copy, you know, it isn't his exact slide, but it's the exact same numbers and stuff, content. But basically, through the elementary grades reorganization, there's going to be 658,000 saved. Through the middle school reorganization, 748,000, a lot of that in the building. New expenses, including the reading and math specialist, is 966,500, and as he's told us, it's 950,000, basically, that's just for intervention. And then with the annual net savings of 439,500. Okay?
I think you need to define that, what those parentheses mean. I don't think everybody's going to
I was just
understand
gonna
what
say
that
that.
means.
That's exactly what I was
So you're
going
going
to
to
say.
say minus instead, or?
Yeah.
Savings.
Minus
Yeah.
from what? What are you subtracting it from?
Okay, so if I say middle school grades reorganization savings over here,
Or cost reduced by?
Savings because
Savings.
she has annual net savings at the bottom.
yeah, but
Low, yeah.
or would a minus work? I mean,
Say both. Maybe you put savings in the word and then minus next to the number.
oops. Okay.
People understand expenses and savings. And negatives and non-negatives, you know.
And
New expenses, just so it's clear.
And just to be consistent, you've got the credits in parentheses, which is common practice in accounting, and the annual net savings is also a credit, so that.
It's
should be
not
as
in
well.
parentheses, thank you. Okay,
I don't think you should even have the parentheses. The people who are watching this are not understanding standard accounting. I would put a minus. They know what minus means. We're taking that money away.
Whatever you do, be consistent throughout, please,
Yes,
that's all.
yes.
okay. So let me go minus.
Welcome, Laura.
How was the concert?
Fabulous.
Was it chorus and band? That was always my favorite one. That was my one.
Okay. Okay?
So I still have the question,
What's that?
what is this being taken away from? This year's budget?
No, this is the 2-year plan. So it's over 2 years, these savings will come into play
Savings from,
annually. Annual net savings out of this reorganization and putting in the intervention.
From the
So
status
if it's-
quo, from the current
So-
state of affairs.
both 2020-21 and 21-22, we're going to have save 439.5
No.
each year?
No, at the end of the 2 years, we will have saved on an annual basis going forward $439,000 a year.
That is not clear.
Annual, yeah, so it's
That's not
not
annual.
annual, it's total save it, it's not, in
Total
annual
net
means
savings.
annually per year, so you would
Yeah.
do, you
Okay,
would
so,
multiply that number.
so
So
how do you
total
want to say that
2-year
it's
net
good?
savings?
Net
Okay,
savings from, you gotta put the 2 years there.
Yeah,
The two
that's- yeah,
fiscal
that's
years.
better.
2-year, okay, good.
Or I like what he said, put the years, put the actual dates, that's what you meant,
2021,
right?
Yeah.
2022.
1920-22,
No.
but that isn't.
1992, great.
That's a hell.
You were just born.
Why don't you put that in your title? Overview of 2-year plan, 2020 to 2022. There you go.
Okay,
Oh, yeah.
okay.
My question is going to be on that slide. Why aren't you including the one-time cost to modify the high school building?
I was gonna say that too. Because I wanna know what that is. What is that?
That's going to be, from all that Tom has said, that's approximately equal to the $748,000 from closing the middle school. And so that first year, when he originally presented the budget and presented the plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, but when he was originally saying, you're not going to get any of this savings, this $439,000 is all coming out in year 2. But what he's done, and what Matt has done, is to work to front end as many of these expenses as possible and to do some of the savings so that the taxpayers are going to get some of this $439,000 in 2021 and then the rest of it in 21-22.
We're trying to fund it today, where the savings relates to next year and the year after.
I know, but there's a line up there that now says new expenses, including reading and math specialists, which we've already been told basically covers just the reading and math specialists at $950,000. So that's $16,000 worth of other expenses. Okay, well, the average person in the audience is going to say, well, what's the cost to modify the high school building? And And quite honestly, if you say it's $748,000, then that has to go in as a expense line.
That would be for this year. She's trying to make a representation for the future years, not this year.
Whether it's 1 year or 2 years,
I think
I mean, that's a major amount of money.
agreed, but I think it would have to be a different slide.
Or can you just put that in your text box to note this excludes the one-time cost of, an approximate whatever, which was
See,
absorbed from, in the current year.
Okay, let me just say that next year, there's going to be $748,000 that's saved, that is going to be reinvested in the high school for one time. So it doesn't come off of the bottom line for the expenses, nor is there money there to put in the interventionists, because it just isn't there. What Tom is trying to do and Matt is trying to do is to get as much of that money out of the current budget as they can, so that they can sequester that, encumber it at the end of the year to be able to spend over the summer, so that Tom can fast forward the intervention faster. And, so that's why things are a little bit of a moving target right now, because he's trying to do as much as possible. But if we had a couple of kids move in who have extraordinary needs, or if the federal budget gets frozen or something like that happens, that $750,000 that Matt has been able to find in the budget might not all be available this year. So, it's a bit of a moving target. We just don't know until we get further down the road.
So do we explain that $250,000 of that came from unexpended funds from the last fiscal year?
Yep.
And an additional approximate $500,000 came from cost savings across all departments, which, you said you asked people to cut their budgets by 1.54% or whatever it is. I mean, could you just, quick and dirty, this is where that money came from? Because it'd be transparent and let them know that it was included, it carried forward from the last fiscal year and also extracted from the in-force default budget.
So what I'm feeling right now is that we really need a slide on how, and I'm going to have to work with you on this.
Yeah, that's
on how the high school is getting funded.
we should.
It sounds like we really need to have that.
Because if all
I
of
think
us
we're
are
going to get asked a lot of questions.
And I would add the word estimate.
Yep.
High school, I'll just put that there, and we'll figure that out as we go along.
I backed into that number when I was looking at stuff. I said, we had $250,000 from there, and he's saying 1.5% off the, the 36 million or whatever it was, and I was like, there it is. But nobody said anything, and I was guessing.
And if we can't understand it, chances are the public is going to say, what the heck is
No,
this?
I think clearly this is brought up that we need to have a slide or so in here for this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Explain where that money
Yep. And I'll work with Matt to get that and get it out to you guys.
And you might want to say something like, in an effort to distribute costs over multiple years, this is why we've done this.
I don't know why this happened.
We cut 1.5% from the budget.
That could be. Okay, money saved in the 2021 proposed operating budget. And so here's, of the $439,500 outlined as savings in the 2-year reorganization plan, the current year operating budget reflects the following. And this is also from the superintendent's presentation in November, this slide. Is this okay as is, or do you want it done a different way? I just copied this slide from him.
Well, I think we need to be consistent again with that. If it's a savings, you're subtracting the money from the bottom line, and the cost related to central office location, you're adding money that wasn't in there before because the central office was in this building.
So these need to be minus, and then this is a plus. this is a minus, and then this is a minus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to say if it's a reduction, why is it not negative?
Okay, this is a copied and pasted slide, so I can't change it right now, but I will, okay?
And again, I would say estimated. Can we?
Estimated
where?
costs.
Estimated reduction,
Estimated money.
estimated savings, or estimated savings.
Oh, those are numbers that are going to be in the actual operating budget as presented.
So, but the cost related to central office location, I mean, is that an estimate or is that a
No,
choice?
that's what we're going to actually pay. And then
So just savings.
32,000 is what was cut out for the middle school closure, and 205 was cut out for reduction in staff.
Maybe I did redo this one, did I? Oh, I did. Oh, I redid this one. I didn't copy and paste it.
Well, so what's the difference really between then an estimate and not an estimate? Because I'm going to guess at this time you don't know which two staff members, or do we know there's two staff members retiring? How do we know what their salaries are?
Well, one of the salaries, okay, you're right, a budget is an estimate, okay? So these are numbers pulled from the budget. These are the actual numbers removed from the budget. And the reduction in staff members, one of them is known because there's nobody in that position. We just removed that position and what was in the budget in the current year. The other position is not known. It's just a guesstimate as to what we think it's going to be. So yeah,
So
I can understand estimate would be safe.
Or anticipated.
I mean, I get why we use the word estimate. I just didn't know when is the appropriate time to write estimated versus not.
But these are line items that we've got.
That's correct.
So I mean, if they're not, I mean, we're asking people to approve this budget with these line items. If there are shifts, then that's done by the school board finance committee and Matt.
Okay, budget savings.
Okay. Budgeted savings? Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
So that explanation of the 439,000 outlined as savings in the two-year reorganization, the current year, that one we're in right now, 1920,
No, in,
it says current year operating budget.
I'm not seeing current year operating budget.
Yeah, in the
Oh, there it is. Okay. Okay.
I think what he's meaning is that, see the heading there is for the 2021, that would be the current year. That's what.
So let's take that out because that is,
You want to say proposed or just nothing? Because we are proposing it to the general public.
I would just say proposed budget too, take out operating.
Well, there's a difference between the operating and the default.
we actually had that conversation before you got here, Cheryl.
I was going to say, I have that we should add something because there was much more discussion this year than ever before about why it's better to have an operating budget than a default. I think that we need to add a slide. I mean, so far we've only talked about the budget. And then the default budget should be mentioned here somewhere, and the school board's going to tell you what the default budget is. It is mentioned here. And I wouldn't mind putting a brief explanation of the default budget is what you have to have, because if you vote the operating budget, the proposed budget down, you have to have money to work on. Again, real layman's terms. But then, the school board's going to give the details on that, but we've only been talking about the proposed budget so far, so I think that's pretty clear that this is reflecting the proposed budget.
Are we allowed to say, because I do agree that I've never heard the difference between the proposed and the default as much as I have this year, and the significance of one over the other. So are we allowed to give, I don't know, like, are we allowed to say?
Try and sell our budget?
Yeah, like,
Well, that's what we're.
these are the downfalls of a default budget, or can you not say that? Like, I'm trying to understand what you can and can't say.
We could do that.
It's the truth.
Because
It's the
it
fact.
helps people understand why you need a proposed budget versus a default budget. I didn't understand that, so.
Okay, cool. Let's, are we good with this one? Because we do get
Can I
into
make a couple
default
of
in a minute.
suggestions?
Yeah?
Where you put in proposed, that's actually where you need to have the 2020, 2021. And then you need to get rid of the bottom line, because we're only talking about this year's budget. The additional net savings to be realized in 2020, 21, 22, we can't guarantee. That's hope. Something could come up, that could disappear. That can't be.
That's right.
So is that where you put
Anticipated.
estimated
Yeah.
or anticipated? Yeah. No, sorry.
No,
If I take that out, then we can't credit this slide, saying that the source is from the superintendent's presentation. I mean, it wasn't his presentation, but,
yeah, it's coming from slide 7. So if you go back to slide 7, I can probably answer this question. So, yeah, so there are other alignments that are going to happen in the second year that are going to cause that.
However, there's no guarantee of that. In the next 2 years, you could have 4 new members on the school board who go, we don't like this, and it changes.
Under the current plan.
How? It doesn't read well from.
okay, what we're talking about here is a plan. We're not talking about, this is a proposed operating budget of the $439,000 outlined in the plan. Here it is. I mean, this is about the plan. It isn't.
Right.
This isn't a guarantee. We're not saying you're saying money back guarantee.
Exactly. However, everything down to that last those last 2 boxes is all about 2021.
Yeah, I agree.
And
I
then
see what
there's a
you're saying.
little thing at the bottom that says, yeah, we're going to get some extra money in 21, 22.
And
Yes.
how about if you use the word anticipated net savings? And additional net savings to be related at 2021, 2022.
Or make that a different color so it's not, because I agree with Jim, everything, and your heading says 2021, and all of a sudden at the bottom, we're adding something in another year.
So are we allowed to do this where you copied the slide from the superintendent? Are you allowed to modify it? Okay.
Just take out
It's just the
reference to
content.
his source.
Not.
It's a source.
There's no
Just don't,
copyright
just
on
don't
it.
cite it.
Well, I didn't know if we're twisting his word.
We're not changing the numbers. Yeah, it's not verbatim.
Making
For
it
me-
more clear for our
I get what you guys are saying, though. I understand the point that
For me, it closes the circle a little bit to have the total of the 439,000. If you just have 281, and then it's kind of like, okay, so now what?
Well, that's why I think the word anticipated net savings for that year
Yeah, I'm good.
closes that loop like you said.
So essentially, the 281 and 157 is the 439, correct?
Exactly.
So if that's how my brain thinks, rather than throwing it up top, why not just throw that at the bottom? And, so people understand that 281 and 157 equals 439 in a simple mathematical problem.
So just add another column here, total savings 439,000?
Yeah, something
Or
like
cut and
that.
paste.
Or just move it around.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean.
Okay.
Maybe you put the 439 at the bottom and took all your verbiage and just throw it to the left. So, I don't know.
Or just say total anticipated savings 439,500, and then it goes back to slide 7.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Okay, I could do that. I got to, add another column there, so. Proposed versus the default. Here's where we begin to talk about the default. Let's see if I can make that.
Now, is it at this point that you want the school board to step in and define that?
No, I think the school board should have done it before we begin our presentation.
Well, I don't remember how we did it last year. That's
Yeah,
why.
I think the school board should start it off with the default budget, or after the proposed budget, one or the other, but not in the middle.
Well, I agree with you there, but I can't remember how we did that.
The budget goes first.
I'm sorry?
The standard is the budget goes first. It's the first warrant article.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're keeping it in sequential.
So, the differences between the two are costs that meet educational needs. Ice hockey funding is included in the operating budget, the proposed operating. Operating versus, do I say? What do I say?
Proposed operating versus default.
Line item accuracy.
Yeah, VS.
VS, we all know what that means.
What?
VS
In the
instead of
title of the
versus.
slide.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay with that? Okay.
But
And
all of
savings
these things pertain only to the proposed operating budget, not the default.
I'm sorry?
The bullets that you have there are points that pertain to the proposed operating, the virtues and the merits of the proposed operating budget,
Right.
where your title says versus default, and you've got graphics for both. That's all.
So how would you like to say it?
How about merits of the proposed budget, or
Hate this.
benefits, or
Okay. Benefits of proposed operating budget?
Highlights,
I don't like the word benefit because or similar word because it shows like, listen up, benefit, like keyword of this is why you want to choose the operating, not the default.
So in both the operating and default, costs that meet the educational needs is there. So if we're saying benefits of the proposed operating budget, it kind of implies that the default budget isn't meeting the educational.
Okay, good point.
additional cost?
what's
in
not
both?
screaming to me
Both meet
is that
educational needs.
knowing
And that
your
would be
audience is
benefits.
critical here. And the folks that show up to these things oftentimes are looking at the bottom line. And nothing here says it's $250,000 less than the default.
Yeah, that's up in the beginning.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I don't think we need
If I'm
it.
a salesman,
I don't think we need the
if I'm
graph.
buying from someone, I'm sorry, Cheryl, go ahead.
I don't think we need the graph. That would give us more space there.
See, here's,
The graph is irrelevant.
here's the slide that shows the,
But why not keep it back in? I think the more, if you want to drive the point home that you want the proposed operating budget, that as much as you can loop those savings back into people will help sell it.
so if we put something here,
I'd get rid of those two bar
$250,000 kind of
marks.
something.
Why not just put it as a bullet?
Get rid of the 2 marks and then just sit there and stipulate exactly what you're doing.
Do what? Get rid of what?
The yellow and the purple line, the bar chart.
Works so hard to show the differentiation, which is very
I know,
minimal.
but if you come in and say that the,
But there's no lines.
I know.
There's no numbers on the lines.
Okay, so what is it that you want to do?
Eliminate the bar graph and keep the numbers.
We're trying to sell this, and
Yeah.
I know that when I was dealing with people and bidding for work,
bar charts do not work.
they kind of really don't. But the more you show or repeat the cost savings throughout your presentation, the better chance you have of getting that money out of my pocket.
Can I make a point though? If as somebody who, I'm not saying me, I think to the general public who's concerned that all we care about is the bottom line and we're just closing schools because all we want to do is cut money. For people who are concerned about that, I'm just thinking all I keep hearing is you talk about numbers. Everything you're saying is I'm cutting money, cutting. I kind of think it would be nice to have a slide that doesn't talk about money because I think there's another section of our voters who think all we're trying to do is cut money. I just keep seeing us hounding cut money, cut money.
But that's the only thing that this committee
That's what we're charged with.
What's that?
We're charged.
That's a little bit of why that's why I would like to retain these slides, is because in the past, when the budgets were going up, and being proposed even higher, we ended up with default budgets, we ended up with failed teacher contracts, we ended up with all kinds of dysfunction in the system. Now, with more modest gains, increases, we're actually passing teacher contracts, and we're working functionally, and we're reallocating money for better results for kids. And, that's kind of what I'd like to get to with this. That's why, why I put it in there. But
That's a better verbiage that you just used. Back to your other slide there, where you're saying meets educational needs.
Yeah.
Realigns funding more. I want to say more efficiently.
Targeted. No?
I know what Moira's saying, though. People are going to get the impression that we're just continuing to cut funding.
Well, actually, I think what we need to do is put in the words that we are trying to level out the budget over the years. And by accomplishing this, the level of school spending will come down, but the amount of education will go up. And I think that's how we need to word it.
I'm just thinking that there's going to be people who just give me a slide that doesn't talk about money. Give me a slide that tells me that you care and that money is not your first priority.
I agree with you.
That's what I'm thinking that some particular groups of people are going to be thinking. I understand too, and I guess like being new to this, I'm not really quite sure what our rule is. Like, we're presenting a budget, so obviously it needs to be about money. But I'm just thinking, if I'm someone in the audience who is not happy with the reorganization, and all I think is that the school board and budget committee is out to cut money, I just hear you cutting money. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that's what some people are going to think. The interpretation is that that's all we care about.
It's just a discussion. But, okay, so for this slide, what we're trying to do is sell the people that the proposed budget is the way we want to go. And the reasons on the right hand, the left is the numbers for the budgets. But it realigns funding for the improved student outcome. It includes the hockey, where everybody thinks that because they voted in the hockey funding last year, it's going to automatically be there. But it's not going to be there if we go with a default budget, because it was a warrant article last year. And people aren't going to remember that. And I'll be honest, it escaped my mind until the first time it was brought up in our first meeting. Yeah. Well, the first time I heard it in our meeting, I scatterbrained that, thinking that it's just going to be carried over. It's not if the default budget gets voted in. Everything that we got last year from warrant articles is not included.
Is there any other warrant article that will not be included?
No.
Or are the other warrant articles just one-time things?
They were just capital funding for the fire. Was the fire?
It established the capital funding, which is fine.
Yeah, which is not part of the operating budget.
So I do at least like the bar graph. I don't know, maybe because all the other ones are bar graphs too. I do like it without the bar graph.
There's one
maybe
thing.
We could add a bullet though that the operating budget, if there's not a line item for it, you can't put something in it.
Well, that would be done on the default budget when they describe it.
So but this would be a benefit, which is, a benefit would be if there was a $0 value in the default budget, we can't put anything into it.
For instance, the 6th grade athletics.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know how specific we get, or if it's just something that you say, which is, like a bullet of cannot put dollars where if it's a $0 value, and then maybe you give an example such as we wouldn't have funding for 6th grade athletics or.
Well, you intimate that with line item accuracy because our hands are tied, Matt's hands are tied. in a default status. So we can't add or subtract anything if we're in a default. And that would include things that are part of the reorg plan, such as the funding for the 6th grade athletics.
So Annie, would you explain that when you went over that line?
To say the line
item
item.
accuracy
Yeah.
to include, and then would you explain that?
Put it in your
Okay.
text box.
Yeah, I think that's a
Really
really
bad
good,
language,
really good
line item
thing to take that particular one. Yeah, Cheryl?
We do. There's a lot.
I would suggest
I know,
another
but-
slide that just generally says why an operating budget is better than a default, and give examples, and then say, and this is how it applies to our budget. So
I like that idea. I was thinking.
like
you
that.
have
I think that's a good
an
idea.
operating budget, you have more flexibility in meeting the needs. The default ties you to,
Right.
and Matt can probably better explain this than I can.
So what if you sell it all in a bunch of bullet points, and then at the very end you say, in addition to all these benefits, it's also the proposed budget this year versus default is also offering a savings of such and such? Or do you think,
Nice.
again, you should take numbers out? That's a pretty.
That is the way to sell it.
So what's a line item that was in one of the default budgets from 2 years ago that we would be carrying over? But the Ford F-150? Was that in there?
No, it has to be removed, or that has to be adjusted per statute.
Because that was a one-time.
One of them was new budget adjustment, and it's like, what does that mean?
So, yeah, so we want to get rid of that stuff out of,
Yeah, there were the substitute nurse PDA things that.
is there something that we can
Tell
go
us
back
what it
and
is.
look at and say, okay, so 3 years ago, this was in the default budget, 2 years ago, it was in the default budget, and then this year, if we don't change it, it's gonna be in the default budget again. So how many more times do you want to carry this over? And then have us make confusing line item adjustments?
No,
What?
no.
I can't.
What? I'm just putting down ideas here as people are saying them.
No, I'm not going to be able to fix that.
No.
I have to change the underlying accounting software.
Okay.
Yeah, that's,
Integrate-
you want to
That's a
do
big
very
issue.
general. A default budget ties your hands or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
A operating budget, you have flexibility to put the money where it needs to go.
Real-time needs.
Yes.
To serve real-time needs.
Today's real-time needs.
I agree. Keep it simple.
Or something along those lines.
We'll talk about it. Okay.
So then the next one will say, and how that applies to this budget that you're looking at is,
What are you saying?
Default budget is required by state law that mandates your hands to be tied.
I think, I think it's important though
This is
that
not
you
live
do
free or
say
die
that it's
anymore.
a state law.
Yeah.
It's a
And
state
it does.
law.
It
It's
ties
not
your
like-
hands, you can't do
It's
that.
not Sanborn
I don't
saying
like it.
you can't do it. It's a state
Right.
law that we can't
so
change
like
it.
ties your hands in how money can be spent when, as needs arise.
I think it's important at our last meeting when Tom said, we need to be cognizant of two things at the deliberative, looking ahead beyond the public hearing, is that somebody could change the operating budget and make it sky high or make it lower than the default, and make the default desirable. So you need to look at both sides of that coin.
Right.
But yeah, it would only be desirable if they raise the operating budget, right? Then people would say, oh, let's get the default. But they
what
don't
Tom said,
realize
too,
that, again,
is that-
we have a huge thing that we're doing here. We're reorganizing this whole system. And if we get a default budget, our plan pretty much could go right out the window. And these savings that we're saying here won't apply. We won't,
You're right on.
saying that?
We're still doing the reorganization. It's just that we're funding like the middle school at 100%. I mean, that we're funding an empty building at 100%.
So then there's going to be a lot of line item transfers.
Yeah.
In the default, if we get the default?
Oh, yeah, we can change.
Yeah.
I'm just, again, trying to put myself in the position of somebody who's looking at this, has not gone through what we've just gone through, and we need to explain to them clearly why this works better for them, like Maura's saying. Why is this benefiting me? I don't want to know about the numbers, but, if we need to serve our kids and we need to do those intervention programs that we're planning, if we get a default budget, how is that going to impact that?
It's just going to tie our hands, where we're going to end up having to, money isn't aligned properly in the budget for the programs that we're offering.
Put that down.
In
Money
the
isn't aligned
default?
properly in the budget and the program.
In the default budget?
In the default budget. And I misspoke about the middle school being funded 100%. It's not. I knocked it down in the default budget. But that was just an extreme example. Okay.
So the default is a formula.
It's a formula.
And so we cannot customize to our needs
Not aligned properly for the
with
programs.
a default budget. It's a
Programs.
formula that we can't change. With the operating budget, we can put into place the programs that we have in our plan to benefit the students and to benefit the district.
But Cheryl,
Did you get all that?
it doesn't mean that the school board can't transfer between accounts.
No,
It's just that
No.
at the onset, they're slated in these buckets. I mean, back on the 1024 meeting, a lot of my questions were about the wild fluctuations, and he was like, well, those are the accounts we're transferring from and to, and the light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, it's because we've been, when you look at it historically, we've been on the default for so
So the
long.
default is a formula that is more restrictive, rather than tying your hands, but more restrictive. But the operating budget allows us to be able to meet the needs and as they come up, or meet the needs as we planned,
And the other thing is,
be able to implement the plan more effectively.
I think some of the $1 items are things that are really important, and I think, that one with the sixth grade athletics, I mean, that is just like, there's no funding in the default budget for sixth grade athletics.
So that would
You
be
know.
your next slide. So
Right. Right.
this is how that principle of restrictive and ability to fund what's needed is, for example, because of the reorganization, if we get the default budget, we will not be able to provide middle school athletics.
And the hockey program doesn't get their
the hockey
$10,600.
The operating budget allows us to align the costs with the needs.
Transparent.
So maybe, just pitching this, you do a pros and a cons next to each other. The pros are, it allows us to fund the hockey program. Pros of a proposed. The cons of a default is it won't allow us to fund the hockey program. The pros are it will allow us to properly allocate funding for programs. The cons are, we're restricted by the state, so it's very simple, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Hey, here's the pros, hey, here's the cons, side by side. They don't necessarily have to match, but it would be great if they match because it would be very simple language for people to understand.
Detriments is kind of a,
So
Petty
ties
word.
your
Maybe-
hands.
maybe
Annie,
challenges.
Restricted by state formula.
You're trying to be nice now?
I thought that was a nice shock value on that one.
it's just a very strong word.
It's like,
Okay, so I'll work on that. Do you want to come up with do you want to come up with all of them right now and watch me type them, or do you want me to take them and kind of,
Just take them and
Do
do
them
it.
and send them to us.
okay. I mean, I'll do it whichever way you want. Okay, so here we've got, this one is not the benefits. This is going to be, the benefits are going to go in the next one, and then this is going to be just the proposed operating budget. I'm not even sure we need this again, do we?
go back to that. I like the difference, but I think you should put proposed budget, the amount,
Actually, you should change
less
that
than,
to the proposed.
or 247.52 less than the default budget number. Instead of the difference at the bottom, because the difference, you're not going to be reading those multiple numbers and figure out, oh, wow, this one's less by 200. The proposed budget, yeah.
And you really need to go and change that proposed budget to the proposed operating budget. We need to get people used to hearing that word.
Now, how many,
It's in the header.
I know, but you still want to kind of sell it home.
Because I think if we were getting confused by the word budget, people would.
okay, obviously this is going to get formatted differently here. You know, it's going to go over here. Okay?
Proposed operating budget, less 247,000, and then default budget on the bottom.
So if I looked at those numbers, this, subtract this, this.
Proposed operating budget is lower than the default.
Fine, perfect.
And also to the point, I know you got us to fit and everything, is Tom's concerned that someone's going to think that it's not adequate to support operations. When he said, not only is it adequate, not only did we budget it strategically, but there's some wiggle room in there for the uncertainties of the transition. So is there a way to relay that so that people don't feel like they need to, you know, try to raise it and we wind up with a default?
Well, sorry.
Yeah.
If we were to turn around and say that this budget has an extra 1.8 million in it or something like that, or 1.25%.
Well, no, then someone's
for
gonna
wiggle
wanna
room,
cut it.
then somebody's going to want to take it out.
I think it's safe to say, I mean,
But it is needed in case we do have an
It
influx
is.
of students or some type of handicap issue or special needs issue that comes in.
And we've established a list of things that need to be looked at and audited next year after the reorganization, and some of these uncertainties are taken care of. You know, the athletics is one that Tom pulled out, supplies. What?
Everything.
everything.
This is.
IT, yeah,
Moving these
online
schools is like
subscriptions.
moving into a new
There was a bunch of
house,
things that need to be looked, there's about $500,000 in spending that needs to be audited.
So are we going to have a slide that shows maybe things that we'll be looking at in the future, or is that just
Well,
totally
that
off
should be
base?
coming from the school board.
Okay, the school board will.
They should.
I agree.
And I'll bring
Yeah.
that up to them again.
Okay.
Yeah, that's their bag.
Because, you know,
It isn't
that's
just
their
their
job
bag,
to
it's
do
our
that.
bag,
and-
HG.
Well, no, it's
The school
their
board
job
job
to
is to
vet
do
that
the
out.
auditing?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
No, I mean, they've absolutely agreed that they're going to be doing that. You know, we've agreed that we want to see it. So I think it's going to,
That's something that should be done without any hassle from
gonna happen.
anybody.
okay.
We've got 4 new people,
Where are we?
3 new people. Who knows?
Proposed operating budget.
People
Okay.
up for re-election this year.
And then this is the pros and cons
Oh, and the school
to be
board.
filled out. Okay. Then here are details, and I like this idea that you had, Cheryl, of, you know, just
I like,
grouping them,
I like, that's
Yeah.
good.
so it's a little more readable. Okay. This is the one that, I mean, I like this. I don't know how you feel about it, but what I did was I went in and I went and looked at the appraisal books in the appraisal reports, which are like yay thick, but I finally found the section to see what the differences in the appraisals have been when they revalued in each of the years in both towns, and then took a $300,000 house today and took it back to what it would have been at each of those reappraisal places, multiplied out, Matt's been over the spreadsheet that I did that backs this up, but multiplied out the tax rate at that time and stuff.
And that's just the school portion.
This is just the school portion. I did the whole thing, but I just did the school portion for this. It actually ends up being about $1,000 per household, per $300,000 household for the towns in both cases. And it's about, you know, we know the counties, not very much, but the rate in the schools was going up quite a bit, and there were a lot of failed contracts. And then it's kind of been more moderate, and no, I mean, there are people out there who wanted to go down, and that would be nice in some world, but, you know, 3.5% of that was that whole inflation thing, 3.5% of the budget every year is just giving raises to the staff. So it's very hard to have, well, 2.5%, because they're only 70% of the total budget. But, it's really hard to have, what?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
I'm sitting in the audience. This is way
I'm
too much
not
information.
talking to the audience here.
It's
I'm talking to budget committee members. Cheryl, I'm talking
But
to
what
this
is the
budget
point?
committee.
So
Okay.
what is the objective that you want to get across with this slide?
The objective is that this is a modest, it is an increase, it's a modest increase, and it's allowing us to move forward in the way that we want to go, in the direction it funds everything that we want to do for the kids, and it will enable a more positive atmosphere next year when the teacher contracts come up.
So what do all of these bar graphs and numbers and valuations
Showing
and stuff
trend.
have to do with what you just said was great, but I don't see how that relates to this
So
information.
can I make a point?
Yeah.
I understand what Cheryl's saying because I can't read this and understand what we're exactly looking at, and I feel like you'd have to explain it a lot for people to understand it. I think if you're looking at like a 10-year analysis, you say, here's a 10-year analysis of growth or the portion that are taxes. I just feel like you need something more, again, to explain what it is that you're trying to get across, because people aren't going to retain your words when they're looking at these slides. So,
And they'll need a microscope to be able to read it up front.
yeah, I can't even read
Yeah,
this.
that was one of the comments I was going to make is the font.
Yeah, it really looks small on this.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger on my computer at home, which is a bigger screen. But how does it look here? Yeah, it's really hard to see.
If you go to grayscale, that's going to give you an idea what I was complaining about.
Yeah.
You won't be able to see it.
I think the talking point here is restrained growth, is that you're
You just
showing a
lost
trend
everything in the bars.
of restrained growth.
Yeah.
Not so much that we're,
I really don't think it's going to do much to sell our product this time.
No.
I think when we get through the reorg and stuff, then this needs to come out and be brought to the forefront. I know what you're trying to do, and I agree with what you're doing.
My goal is that we've had so much divisiveness in this district over the last 10 years, and there's so much people sniping at each other and stuff that's going on, and it's so much better than it was. And I really feel that there's this whole middle. You've always got wingnuts, but you've got this whole middle of people who want better educational results for fiscally responsible spending, and this is showing that in the past, here with Newton, up 15% in a time of bad times for people financially. Taxes went up 15%, the school taxes, and people were outraged and angry and fighting teacher contracts and voting in default budgets and things like that. And now we've had a period, the last 5 years, where it's only a 3% increase. We're reallocating money, and we're getting more
working smarter.
centralized about what we're doing, and people are pulling more in the same direction. And I think that as a result, there's a good chance we're going to pass our contracts, and we're going to keep moving, and we're going to do better, get better results for kids and stuff like that. So I think that's why I want to. But maybe it isn't something from the budget committee. Maybe that's just me on my on my little platform.
I've always just struggled with these slides and really understanding what's trying to come across with them, What is written in those bar graphs, though, just so I understand?
Contract passed, contract failed.
Okay.
Contract failed, passed, failed.
Some of these are teachers and some are
But
support
these were
staff.
all teacher contracts for the most part. I didn't do the support staff contracts.
Again, but I think there's way too much information here that's not able to be explained. Even if you try to explain it, everybody's
think
eyes
you'll
are going to
lose.
glaze over.
Yeah.
And what you're going to get on both Newton and Kingston is, I can't read the years, but there's a point there where, the budget seemed, the numbers seem to be going downhill.
And then they're
We
going
gotta get
back
those
up.
people back on the school board, because right after that, it's a very steep line going uphill for the past 3 years.
Yeah, from 18
That's
to
a
20.
good point, yeah.
I was going to point that out
It does it
too.
on this slide and on the Kingston
do more
slide.
damage
If you look at the past 3 years, good Lord, do the people on the school board really know what people have to pay for everything else? I look at those increases. Bing, bing, bing.
Maybe you don't do a bar graph. Maybe if you're passionate about it and you're trying to explain it to people, maybe you say, listen, between 2019 and 29 and 2009, you break it down between 2009 and 2014, there was a 15.3% increase in school taxes. In that year, there were also 4 failed teacher contracts. Well, however, from 2015 to 2020, there's only been a 3.3% increase. And guess what? We've passed 3 out of the 5 years. Or, I think the bar graph isn't representing what you want it to.
Yeah, Matt?
Jim has a point where if you look at 2020, I made the revenues very conservative, which makes it look like it's jumping.
Right.
Okay, so that's my best guess at the moment, but it's based on my best guess of estimates. And it's not everything that's going to happen a year and a half from now.
Right. I mean, you basically assume that we're going to spend every penny that's in the budget next year.
It assumes that we're spending all the money in this current budget. Okay. And if we have something left over in this current budget, it's going to reduce that yellow line. It's going to make it smaller.
Okay.
Is it the yellow line or the?
Yeah, I think
Okay,
what
so-
you're trying to sell is you're not going to be supported by this slide.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a tough sell here. Throw it up in front of
Okay, they're out.
300 people.
They're out. They're gone. They're gone. I got it. But I do like what Vanessa said, to try and, just say that, about just try and communicate the restraint that's going on in that way.
I think that's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
If you could do that without so much text and everything, if you just were to come up and make a statement that says from 2009 to 2014, there was a 15% increase. And then from 2014 to now, there's a 3.3. Well, then somebody like me is going to turn around and go, well, I want to take the average from 2016 to 2019 and show me what you got for increases. Because anybody can sit there and manipulate their points of reference to generate different increases and
what I
stuff
did
like
was
that.
to take a 10-year period and break it down into 2 5-year periods, that's all. It was very,
But you did show, I'm not saying that slide was a terrible idea. The graphics did show where your points of interest were, and there wasn't anything hiding in that.
Right.
But if you were just to turn around and verbally state
I
from
see.
2009 to 2015, it was a horrible time, and then from 2016 up to now, it's all nice. Somebody can turn around and go, well, just move that area we are averaging and see what's going on.
Did you just put, rather than a bar, I don't know.
Do we want it? Doesn't sell you anything.
I still don't know what it has to do with this year's budget. What are we trying to say? Why you should support this year's budget? Because in the past it was crummy and now it's getting better. Sorry, that was a quick summary. Again, I'm trying to put myself, I really feel.
No, it's good.
As a budget committee, we have spent a lot of time analyzing this budget and learning about things. We know it all. They know nothing. And it's our responsibility to take that knowledge and make it understandable to them, put it in their terms, because they wouldn't even know what question to ask on that. So I think keep
Okay,
it
so
simple.
they're coming out.
I think there would be benefit to it.
There's another thing we need to keep in mind. We've got a lot of warrant articles that people are going to get nervous about. We've got the seminary. We've got a contract for admins for their wage, their increase, or their union, whatever you want to call it. And how many other ones have we gotten in? I know that Kingston's going to have one for a fire station. There's a lot of warrant articles that are sitting out there that are going to be money. we can use that as a selling point for our budget. Yeah, it's high, but we've also taken fiscal responsibility and only spending money where we have to while we're doing a major change to the town. And they're saving money. I think we had to keep all that big picture in mind while we're trying to do this.
No, you're absolutely right that there are going to be a lot of warrants. Plus, I mean, the middle school might be, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
There's a lot of stuff in the woods there that we still haven't even heard about yet.
I think to Maura's point about, we're saying we want to spend less than the default. Are we really looking at what the students need? And we are, because the money that we used to be spending on heating and electricity in the middle school building and on having like really, really low class sizes in Memorial because we couldn't make the numbers jive. Now that the reorganization will be able to better utilize the teachers in groupings because they'll be in the same building.
And also
we're not paying for a building that's had enrollments going down. So that money that we saved that we were putting into buildings is now being utilized for student needs. It's for teaching. So even though you're kind of concerned that the operating budget is low, it's a better, more efficient use of that money that is more targeted towards education and not towards oil and electricity and mowing the lawn at a building.
Close out the pros and cons? I mean.
Yep, I'm at that slide right now.
Is that a pro and a con slide though, or is that its own slide? Where it's just like.
It's the proposed versus the default.
For anybody who's out there thinking, why are we cutting money?
We're not cutting money. The budget's higher than it was.
But isn't the default budget going to do the same thing? We can still more efficiently use our money with the default budget.
No, because it's got all the wrong line items. It's a mess.
It's a restricted budget.
But okay.
I know what you're saying.
You're cutting money. You're cutting money. That's
who's cutting money?
The budget
is 0.54% higher.
In both cases.
The default budget. Look at that.
Both budgets are an increase.
But voter in the audience, because I've been studying this budget and I'm still calling it cutting money. Cutting money. Voters in the audience see this as cutting money.
Yes. Right
or wrong, that's what they're seeing it as.
I know what you're saying.
Perception is reality.
And I agree, like Cheryl made a really great point. I'm not totally opposed to putting it here, but I just wonder if that's its own slide of, we don't need the default budget money. We don't need all this money, regardless of where the line items are. We don't need this money because we're more efficiently using the money.
So maybe you do that as like the wrap-up summary slide, like in, like at the end, just to help sell your point, more along the lines of what Cheryl said.
Yeah.
The savings that we'll get from closing the school would allow us to use the funds better.
Right.
I just think you need to sell it. Because there's a lot of people that are like, why are you closing the school?
Well, I feel like we're definitely, there's two different, there's three. There's one side, the other side, and in the middle. But I feel like we have to play both sides of the coin of how to.
Right.
You can't push it too much one way because then the other person's going to think, and vice versa.
You can also put down that administration wants the operating budget, where the default budget would bind our hands, and it's more difficult to work within.
Takes more of your time.
More effort.
Yeah, it's not transparent.
No, it's not.
It's not transparent.
And it will hinder your being able to upgrade the new system to tailor the accounting to be the way you want it. No?
I have to redo that.
Yeah, that's all data entry that's got to be done no matter what,
Well,
right?
I know you need to redo the whole chart of accounts, but if we're on a default budget now, heaven forbid we're on a default budget again next year or the year after, you can go ahead and redo your chart of accounts, but it's not going to match up with the budget from which we're conducting business.
Okay, well, essentially, if you're going to be voting in the default budget, you're going to be voting in line items that we just frankly can't spend. With that.
But those monies can be transferred.
That's exactly what I've
Why?
been trying to
Because
say.
of the
Those are the words
formula?
I needed it.
Yeah, because it, like that one that says like new budget adjustment. I mean, I have to go back 2 years to figure out what the heck that was. And then I have to look today and say, okay, is that applicable today?
Oh, when you're creating the default budget?
Yeah. And unfortunately, the way the formula works, I can't get rid of it. Because it's not
In the default.
in the default.
So you got to bring that down to $1 or a zero line item.
I mean, that's an account that has a wrong name to it. And you have to go back to the narrative of when the people were discussing it in deliberative like 2 years ago to figure out what the heck it is.
All right. I've just a thought that came into my head. When the default budget passed last year, does anybody remember by how many votes?
10.
All right. I really don't see us having an issue to getting people to go with the proposed budget this year, because last year it was like basically begged of the people, please pass the teacher contracts and go with default budget.
If you must.
If you're going to do anything,
Yeah, the
please
superintendent said it.
pass
He said
the
it, yeah.
contracts and we'll deal with the default budget.
Right.
So,
That's what they got.
and that's exactly what we got. We got what we asked for. Now, does anybody
Good point.
think that that's going to be the same situation this year?
No.
If we turn around and get up there and go, look, folks, yeah, it's $250,000 savings between the default budget and this budget right now. Please vote for the proposed budget. And you put up 3 slides and say, give some background details on the differences between the two. One slide's dedicated to differences. The other one is more geared towards what we're going to be doing with the money and how it's going to be allocated to the normal everyday student abilities, then the challenge, and then the really challenged, and then wrap it up somehow on a 3rd slide. Do you think we're going to lose those 10 votes?
No.
I think that somebody would turn around and go, or a majority of people would turn around and go, yeah, they're putting it right out there, and we should make that point again this year that it was only passed by 10.
It's fairly simple. You vote for voting for the default budget's going to cost you X number of dollars more than voting for the.
Bingo.
The proposed budget.
And that's what the people are going to see, and that's what's going to drive 50% of the people.
But I think that you have a whole nother audience that is not happy with the reconfiguration and not happy with your proposed budget being lower. So I think that you need to take into consideration that you need to convince these people.
Oh, yeah.
You have people that are going to go, no way, I'm voting for the default.
Or I'm going to raise the proposed by 10%.
Exactly.
That's what I'm worried
That
about.
was my knee-jerk reaction when the superintendent presented his budget. What do you really want here? Yeah. You really want people to not pass your budget and get the default? And it wasn't until I started learning more, and most of these voters, they're not going to be as informed about it. And
No.
I mean, my initial thought is, oh, this is smoke and mirrors. He really wants us to do the default budget. And I think that there's an audience who is going to say, I want more money.
And the thing and this goes back to that whole thing with the disconnect and failed teacher contracts, is there's a backlash that happens every time that happens. Every time somebody stands up in the deliberative session and says, oh, I want a 10% increase in the budget, maximum amount of the proposed budget, and then it comes to the voters, and the voters feel angry, and the next year they fail to pass a teacher's contract. It's just happened again and again and again. I hope these people are smarter than that, because the teachers need to get their contract passed. And that's why I had that thing in there about how important it is, because that's what's causing this middle of people who are voting in favor of budgets and voting in favor of the contracts. It just penalizes them time after time after time. It's not good business.
Why I think it's imperative to say what Tom said, or get Tom to say it, that what we're proposing is valid based on targeted areas of, learning opportunities and the focus of where we want to bring this district. It is sufficient. We also have some surplus in there, which, we've had lean years and, or in years past, we've returned over $1 million to the voters. Our unexpended fund balance is going to be probably smaller at the end of this year, but it's because the spending and the budgeting is targeted to support the planned operations.
And I think that's really good. That would be really good for Tom to say at the deliberative, and I think you'll have a chance to say it. It would be.
Remember that electioneering line? We have to stay to the.
But this is a budget that he's recommending.
It's his budget, so it's not electioneering.
However, he recommends it to the school board and the budget committee. We don't want to put an employee in a position of saying something that needs to come out of the mouths of somebody that's an elected official.
Okay.
Well, he's telling the truth. He's saying that the money that I've put into this budget is realistic and it meets the needs. I would not say anything about having extra in there. But that's the way you make a budget. It's, again, like Matt said, it's an estimate. Nothing's going to be exactly what's written on that line item.
Right.
So, you build the budget and understanding that.
Question versus a superintendent standing up and making a statement.
Okay.
I don't agree with that. I think he needs to make a statement to
He needs to say, you know what, this budget works for me.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
He can say that.
This budget works for me.
So why can't he say why?
The school board has set goals and priorities for the district, and this budget works to meet those goals and
3
priorities.
meetings ago, didn't he get up and say that, Matt? Sorry? 3 meetings ago, isn't that what he opened up with? This is this proposed budget is what it took me, summarized, this proposed budget is what it took me to run the school district this year. This is cheaper than the default budget. So I don't want the default budget. For the taxpayers, I want the proposed budget.
Right.
He can go up and repeat those words again, and we're not electioneering, and we're not forcing him as an employee of the school board to say anything in particular that he already hasn't said, or he wouldn't say at any time. So I wouldn't be concerned about with what Tom's going to get up and say. We just ask him, say, hey, get up and say what you told us before, that the people need to hear.
We just need to make our point clear enough in our presentation as to why this needs to pass.
Right.
You know what I mean? From a budgeting standpoint, this is why it makes sense.
And that's the pros and cons that I will work on and get out to you guys, and then you give me input and let's get it together. I'm going to talk with Matt about it, and we'll go through and come up with, I wrote down a lot of notes so from all our discussion, but.
If it's not there on the pros for the proposed, make sure that you have that it's adequate, that it is adequate funding to support the proposed changes and plan and reinvestment in the district.
And does it make sense? I mean, again, you can mention it, but does it make sense to really drive in the point that the school board, the budget committee, and the superintendent all sort of agree? I mean,
yeah, and I think that should be in the process.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because when there's a divide, it's so clear to people and it's questionable, but when you see.
I'll figure out how to do that. Okay. I put in this thing, this summary statement that I think this is pretty much what you had said, Cheryl. More efficient use of dollars for the needs of the children with the proposed operating budget. Is that
Could you do one thing?
operating
For the
budget?
needs of all children.
Okay,
A little word, but it does a lot.
yeah.
But that, what is that? You have that under both of them. So if you're saying that the proposed operating budget,
Allows more efficient use of funding for money.
Actually, you need to change that word proposed to the operating, okay, never mind. I didn't read it right.
Or maybe that little verbiage goes on your pros slide for the proposed.
Well, we talked about that, and then and I had it there, and then I copied and pasted it here because you said that you kind of wanted it as a summary thing. And so I thought, I mean, I can do an arrow. I mean, it's going to be really hard to just put it on the side of just the proposed on this thing.
how
But I
about
could
just a summary slide, one
Yes.
slide?
Yes.
A summary slide.
I agree. Keep that on its own slide, take that statement off.
Right.
And do a summary slide.
Okay.
That
To
is-
wrap it all up. Okay, so-
Just one little logistical thing. We're at 14. If I do a summary slide, it's 15. And so that's another piece of paper. I don't know if that's something that's important to you or not, but how much do we need another slide is all I'm
It's two-sided and you got 4 slides per page. You're talking 3 pages.
Well, we were talking 2 to a page, to have them bigger for
Legible.
people. Huh?
So it's legible.
So it's legible.
I would say let's,
Whatever you want to do,
well, I think if you have, it's not the number of slides that's a big deal, but how much information is
the
that?
message. I just wanted to point it out. Okay.
That bottom line, even though you stuck it there, has nothing to do with the tax impact.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's irrelevant.
So the title of this is tax impact, and I would say somewhere we need to put the per thousand. And that Kingston is not $183, it's plus $183. I would love to pay $183 for
Wouldn't
my
that be fun?
property taxes, my school tax.
Those days are long.
So maybe like under, somewhere just put in parentheses, the rate per thousand.
I think it's here.
Because not everybody has a $300,000 house.
No, I
So if
took
you
that
put
one
that in, they can formulate what it would be for their house.
Okay. Okay, I've got that on another slide. So,
It
I think you
was
took that
there.
one out.
It was there.
it was on a prior version.
Yeah, I think that one needs to come back.
But I think it makes sense to put it on that same slide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the title of your slide is tax impact.
So, do you want to have the increase plus per thousand, plus cents per thousand, or okay, all right. Okay.
So why do we have these 2 slides? I'm sorry, why are we breaking it down?
That was another version. I cut it out.
Oh, okay,
I cut it
yeah,
out.
okay. I was confused.
I was just referring back to it to
Gotcha,
get the
okay.
information.
Sorry.
Okay, so I'm going to say, I don't know,
There you go.
Per thousand.
I mean, mill, I don't know, just
But per
000.
I do the rate divided by 1,000. It would
Okay,
be like $17 per thousand.
okay. Like that, right?
$1,000.
Okay.
People understand what
Whoops, I
that
get
means
it.
versus mill.
What?
People understand so much per thousand.
Yeah.
$1,000.
Some people have no idea what they're paying because their mortgage companies pay it. Okay, so I wanted to create another slide here. This thing all changed. I don't know. It doesn't look like what it looks like at home. And this was something where we some summary thing of the proposed operating budget. And, you know, maybe I'll get that quote from Tom from the school board meeting and just, Mr. Ambrose says. Something,
By the way,
I don't know.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would you please change children to students?
Yeah.
Because not all of our students are children.
I guess not all children either.
Now it's more.
Not all children are students either. Some of them are babies.
However, now you're using an educational term versus.
Okay. Okay. And is there anything else, I mean, what do you want this final slide to kind of do?
Sell.
What?
Sell our point. Why-
Yeah, I know, but I mean, how do you want to do it? I'd like to wrap up here, but I'd like to, you know, this is kind of
It's the critical one.
yeah, this is where we're coming to the end here. This is, you know.
Something to the effect that the operating budget will meet all needs and requirements that the district needs to complete fiscal year 2021 or 21-22, whatever it is.
Adequately meets,
It's, yeah.
no, put that as a bullet thing. So, or operating budget. Bullet, meets all needs of long-range plan, 2-year plan. Enables more efficient use of funds to meet needs of all students.
Right.
I think you say it a lot.
Can we come out and say it is not a cut? Because if that is the perception, we need to nip that in the bud. It's not.
No.
This is more efficient use of existing capital or existing funds.
You need to emphasize with people that by allowing it, it does allow, yeah. It's allowing them to spend money.
What was that other thing you just said? I lost it.
What you just typed.
No, there's something else. Maybe Mary said, okay.
It allows for funding for hockey.
Yeah,
Where the-
yeah, we've got that in the pros and cons. This is a summary thing.
Allows flexibility.
It costs less.
Okay, I'll play with it. I'll play with it.
For unpredictable, uncertainties.
Okay, and then, you know, the last slide is tonight, the Budget Committee listens, and then questions and answers, votes on the budget proposal to bring forward. The deliberative session is February 5th, voting to set the proposed budget and other warrant articles that will go into the budget, into the March ballot, and then March 10th is balloting at the polls.
Do we have a snow day for the deliberative?
It is, it's it's February 6th.
When is what's the new date for the public hearing?
14th.
The
January
14th, and the snow date is the 15th. It's on your agenda. Yeah.
On that wrap-up sum, do we want to put that it was the unanimous vote by the budget committee?
Yeah.
Good point. Oh, remember.
Oh, boy.
Because there was a conflict. What was the conflict that caused us to reschedule to January 14th?
What?
What was the conflict that caused us to reschedule the?
The
public
date
hearing
that
to
the petition warrant articles are due.
What time is the meeting at?
They have until the 14th to give us petition warrant articles. And the original one they had was January 9th, so there was a conflict.
Okay, that's good. I've got that.
Oh, I thought it was a facilities conflict. Somebody was using the auditorium.
We actually bounced a group from the auditorium for this budget hearing.
Okay. Public comment? There being none. Committee comment?
Good job to
ma'am.
everybody done.
I have a comment about the Did You Know article. That was never brought up in our meeting that we were going to do a Did You Know article. And in the past, the content was sent out to the committee members so they could review it before it was distributed. So I would like to continue with that process, that if we're going to be publicizing information, that it should be vetted by the committee first.
Okay, and that's fine, with the understanding that, that still comes back, it isn't a committee meeting where we sit there and we rewrite it together, so, it's still up to the chair to put it in, so. Okay, anything else? Hey, have a very happy holidays, Happy New Year, and we will meet again on January 9th. In the meantime, I'll put together some more of these things and send them out to you.
Thank you.
Yes, a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn. Okay. Vanessa?
I made the motion.
Second? Second, Mr. Doggett. All in favor? Aye.